Welcome back to Rambling in the Closet. This is Kyle, rambling. I was doing some work outside, and I had a little I had a little thought, so I thought I'd come up into the closet. I should be honest, I'm not in a closet anymore. I thought I just wouldn't mention it, because then the whole name of the thing, Rambling in a Closet, is not as true. It's now a bedroom. It's a spare room, so it's not a closet. But hey, it's okay. It's still a small space. It's not like there's not like a bed in here. It's just like a room where I recorded stuff, and my wife records stuff in here too. I've taught her how to use the this little microphone. It's quite fun. Anyway, I digress. I'm just saying this is still Rambling in a Closet, but I'm not in a closet. But I will ramble. And I was thinking outside while doing some work. Thought I'd come up here to record it. And sometimes I have conversations in my head, with a make-believe person. I try to, either they're the opposite of what either argument or thought I'm making, or they're just somebody listening, so that I can see if I sound like a stupid person. Obviously, it's still me listening, so I'm a little biased, but sometimes I think it works. I don't know. Do you do that? But yeah, I talk to myself or something else. I'm having a little thought, and I was thinking about these kind of sad, depressing, not fun to think about things going on in the world. And I don't know if you've noticed this, if you're inclined to think of such things, but I noticed this where even if you ease into it, it's like a bummer that you bring something up, and they kind of look at you like, why are you thinking about that? Why? I don't want to talk about that. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I've gotten that a lot, and it's not like I just walk up to someone and say, oh, insert depressing topic here. No, I mean, if I happen to talk about those things, it's being eased into, and it tends to get like a sideways glance, like, I don't really want it. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't like thinking about it. And I've actually been told too by some people, I just don't like thinking about that sort of thing. And I get it. I understand. I can empathize with that. It's not fun, It's not fun to think about some of these atrocities that are either in the past or going on in the present, because when you think about it, and if you know it's happening, you almost have, well, you're not almost, you feel, maybe, I don't know, maybe not everybody, maybe it's just a few people, I do, I feel a calling that I need to do something about it. And I think actually that's pretty normal. I mean, if you look at like protests, all these kids who can't even do the dishes, they come out and tell people how they think the world should be ran. Everybody thinks that they have to help, that they should be doing something. And it took, I've actually been okay about it, I think, in my life. I have gone through phases of thinking I needed to be doing something about it, but I also have realized that I kind of have to get my own house in order first, and then maybe I can go out into the world and make some changes. Until then, just learn, soak up information. Anyways, I digress. We do want to go out and help, especially when you think about something. A good example, there are many things that I could bring up that I know are happening. I can Google and find sources to show that they're happening. So they're not like crazy things. Well, they are crazy, but they're not unbelievable things. Well, I guess they are unbelievable, but they're terrible, horrible, awful things. And you can go back in the past and find some, look now and find some. And I don't really want to talk about it because I'm not trying to just be a bummer. But a good example, I think it's a fine example, and it is still depressing and unfortunate to think about, but we'll just think about it for a few minutes here. Are you familiar with the term Uyghur Muslims? It's spelled with a U. It's like Uyghur. It's Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur Muslims are a prosecuted, what's the word? Group. They're a prosecuted group in China. Now, a lot of what is out there about it is alleged and assumed and thought about. Me personally, I haven't even done that much research into it. But there are some sources that, these guys are being put in concentration camps, right, in China. They're being persecuted. They're in concentration camps with an alleged. The concentration camps exist. The shoot to kill if you try to escape is alleged, but we can all assume that that's there. Their pregnancies are terminated. They're being genocided, basically. There's an actual, for sure, genocide going on nowadays, and it's of a specific sect of Muslims in China. The Chinese government is doing it. And I don't know about you, Maybe you're really good about it. I don't want to judge. I can tell you that I am not good at it. I'm better than most. At least I want to hope I'm better than most. But still, at least half of my stuff must be made in China. Because sometimes there's just no alternative. Sometimes I buy it without looking, but now I've tried to get better at just looking. But then even so, the alternatives either don't exist or are way more expensive than I can afford. And unfortunately, they're just there. And you buy them, and you are doing, I am, and you probably, hopefully you're not, but we are doing economic trade. We are buying things from a country where they are committing genocide. And that's going on right now. Just do it, really, just pause it, do a quick Google search. You'll figure it out in 5 minutes. Maybe you've never heard of this before. Maybe you're somewhat aware. That's going on right now. For sure. Right now. A genocide of a sect of people. From one of our enemies. I mean, ideological enemies. But we do trade with them. And, it's uncomfortable to think about. Because we like to think that, let's put ourselves back in, I don't know, the 40s, 1940s, when you got the good old Holocaust going on. Now, to the people of the 40s credit, I don't think anybody knew about the Holocaust until the end of the war. At least anybody, like you as an American. Americans didn't know about the Holocaust until the end of the war. And we won the war and stopped the Holocaust. So in that case, it wasn't really, we had to not do anything about it. But I guess we can go back to another example, like slavery. We all like to think that if we were back in the good old, 17, 16, 1800s, we would have been ardently anti-slavery. We'd have been out there protesting and saying, no, this is bad. People aren't property. The stuff they would say. And we like to think we'd be those people. In truth, we probably wouldn't, at least not until closer to the abolition. If we were around in the 1700s, slavery was just a thing. There might have been some people who were like, nah, this is bad, and they did groups and stuff. But the majority of people just went about life. They didn't own slaves. The majority of people didn't own slaves, but they didn't, stop slavery from happening either. It just was kind of happening. And these were people of their time, so maybe they just didn't see slavery as being as bad of a thing. Whereas nowadays, we all know genocide is not great. We can all kind of agree that that's not a good way of going. It's kind of immoral. Even people who don't believe in morals will agree that that's immoral. That's not right. Not good. Ocide, anything. Homicide, genocide, all the sides, I guess, aren't very good. But we all know nowadays that, genocide's not great. And yet here we are with all of the information at our fingertips and the ability to protest and to mobilize way more efficiently than ever before, including the times of slavery. And yet we sit here on sitting on our hands, and we either just looking the other direction. It's like the crazy person at a gas station. It's like you just don't make eye contact with them, and they're not there. If you don't make eye contact with them, they're not your problem. It's the same thing going on here, except way, way, way worse. There are potentially millions, I want to say hundreds of thousands. This little source on the BBC said hundreds of thousands. Yeah. So lots of people are just being rounded up and tyrannized by a government with soldiers and guns and stuff, and they can't do anything about it. And the free people on the other side of the world, by the way, the free people who complain about not having a minimum wage of $20 or something, and I'm not trying to get political. I'm not trying to talk about basic economics here, but think about it. We're over here going, oh my gosh, we should be paid $20 an hour to flip a burger, and there are people by the hundreds of thousands right now. And I'm not even talking about all of the rest of the suffering in the world. I'm just trying to use one example that's apolitical. You don't have to have an opinion about it. It's just happening. Okay? Just using that as an example with people that we trade with, that we send money to, China, and we do nothing about it. And because we don't think about it, we don't really, someone will figure that problem. It's not as bad as they say it is. Someone will figure it out. Someone else will come along. Someone else will do something about it. I can't. What am I going to do, right? I'm just a lowly citizen here of the best country, best, greatest, strongest country in the world. What am I going to do about it, I have to buy my fancy coffee mugs, I have to buy my T-shirts. I got to get my What else is? I mean, everything's made in China. Mostly, I gotta have my free stuff. I gotta have my cheap stuff from Amazon and Temu and Shein. I gotta have my. Oh my gosh! I mean, I have seen packages from Shein that cost $20, and the amount of stuff that is in there is incredible. I don't know how they make it that cheaply. Oh no, I do. By not following basic labor laws, or they're not labor laws, but violating the rights of workers like they might do in China. Hey, the Chinese, they work with what they got. The Chinese citizens. My knowledge of the average day in the Chinese is very low, so I don't want to speak out of turn or say anything that's not true, but I imagine they find a job that pays nothing and they go, well, it's better than nothing, so I guess I'll do it. And I mean, just out of curiosity, I don't like this is supposed to be a ramble. I don't like taking notes. But if you Google average pay for Chinese workers, as of 2023, Beijing, which has the highest hourly minimum wage, is $4 an hour. Now, the minimum wage in New Mexico, when I used to live there, was $8 an hour. So that's double. It's still pretty low, I guess. It's not low. It shouldn't be low, but compared to what things are nowadays, it's pretty low. So half of that, and that's the highest minimum wage in Beijing. So that's not even an average. That's the highest. It goes way down if you look at some of these countries or some of these cities. Yikes. That's why everything's so cheap. Now, here's the thing. It's their own country. It's none of our business, right? As long as they're not being enslaved and forced to do these things. I don't even know. Like I said, because I don't know if they're not being. I don't know what's going on in China. I don't want to step too far out of my rambling zone here. But I imagine if we were to live a day in China as a normal citizen, we might not think we might think our human rights are being violated, especially if you're some of the Uyghur Muslims. And I'm pretty sure the Uyghur Muslims are being used as slave labor as well. So there you go. Think about that for a moment. Something in your house. Think about that. Ooh, now that's really uncomfortable to think about. Think about that. Some things, maybe even multiple things in your home, in my home, in the homes of the average American citizen, some of those things are made by slaves. Can you imagine? In this year, 2024, my gosh, that's awful. And yet, we just kind of shrug. We can't do anything about it, It's just, and we don't have enough money to buy the more expensive. I can't buy the American-made jeans. They're like twice the price. Well, maybe I don't need jeans. I don't know. What do you? Maybe there's some khakis I can buy. Are khakis cheaper? I don't know. I want my DJI drones. I don't want to speak again. I don't want to speak at it. Maybe DJI is made in America, but cheap stuff. I want cheap stuff. I want good things, and I want them for cheap, and that's free trade, baby. But it's not, and I don't want to get into economics or anything here because this is not what this show. That's not what this little ramble is about. Obviously, economically speaking, it's not really free trade because they are willing to violate certain what we think of as human rights in order to make their products cheaper than our products. So they're basically breaking the rules, so therefore it's not free trade. Free trade is the free exchange of products and goods and services within a boundary. Like free trade, selling people. That's not free trade. That violates some human rights that we see now. Can't do that. We can sell dogs. That's fine. But you can't abuse the dogs and keep them in unlivable conditions, right? There are boundaries, even in free trade. There are rules that you don't violate in order to make the playing field a little bit, for one, more moral, but also a little bit more fair. And I know life's not fair, okay? If China was completely ethical, doing everything right, and they just made better products and cheaper products, and they just had better technology to do so, okay, well then no one can argue. You should go buy their stuff. It might be a detriment to our local economy, but I don't know. There's different ideas of free trade. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into economics, that even if you spend USDs in China, it will still come back to this economy at some point, so there's a nice little circulation going on, so it doesn't hurt your economy in the long run. I don't know about that. It just feels like it's not great if you send all of your money and buy products and bring in. I don't know. There's just something about it. Like I said, not an economist. I like to think I know a lot about the economy, but this is a little bit more over my head. But we don't want to talk about that. The what I want to ramble about is simply just the idea that here we are in this great life. And I don't know what life you have. You probably have some difficulties. I have some difficulties. I don't think either of and I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know who you are exactly. I like to think I have a good idea of who you are, but I know I don't know your life. But I like to think that you and our lives are probably better than some of those Uyghur Muslims in China right now. I just want to go ahead and get out there on a branch and say that's probably true. Again, we all have our problems. Maybe we're suffering from diseases or bankruptcy or a death in the family, whatever. There's tragedy all over the place. But I think it's a safe bet to say that we have on average, better existence than the people who are being genocided in China. I think it's a safe bet. And so here we are living those lives, however maybe flawed and hard and stressful they may be, but still better than, genocided people. Here we are living those lives. And I think the least we can do is have an opinion about it, and think about it. The least we can do is have our opinion about it. Or not have our opinion. Sorry, I guess the better way of saying that would be to think about it, to actually engage in the act of thinking about what this means. What does it mean that I, without caring, have bought things that have maybe been made by slave labor of people who are being persecuted on the other side of the world? I don't know. I'd like to know how some of our cheap phones are made. I'd like to know where those batteries come from. I'd like to know more about what I don't know. But you go down this rabbit hole and you start figuring out how maybe unethically these things are made. Like, for instance, again, do your own research. I even have to look this up later to see if I was saying something that wasn't true. But there are these fields out in, I think, either the Middle East or China where they mine lithium or, no, it's not mining lithium. It's like fields of acid or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, it's these large portions of a country where they make these things for batteries, and it's awful for the environment. It's destroying the local environment, just completely wiping it out. But they don't have a government. They don't have the EPA to put restrictions on them. That's why they can make stuff so much cheaper than we can, because we have so many restrictions. Some of them probably good, like you shouldn't pollute your environment. A lot of our restrictions are probably very stupid and just cost more money for the American business person to create. But again, I digress. Not talking economics, not talking policies or politics here, but it's something to think about. But yeah, the least we can do in our nice little first world lives, the least we can do is our fair share of thinking. We can think and be uncomfortable for a little bit. And maybe just by doing so, enough people finally stand up and they go, hey, I like my cheap stuff, but I can't do it anymore. My conscience, let's talk about this. Let's see what we can do. Let's see who I can talk to. Let's see who I can network with. Let's see if there are politicians who will listen to me. Let's see if we can't get a massive national movement to look to the other side of the world and say, hey, you can't do this anymore, or else we're not going to trade with you. Now, I'm not saying we should go to war, because I would never advocate for such a thing, but at least maybe a little bit of a embargo, right? Is that what it's called? Embargo? Or a trade embargo? I don't know. Don't buy their stuff. Maybe we can just not buy their stuff that's being made potentially by slave labor. I don't know. It's a novel idea, right? And maybe by doing so, we invigorate our own economy, making them China have a financial incentive to act proper and maybe not genocide an entire group of people because of their religion or cultural differences or whatnot. I don't know, just a thought. And again, what am I doing? I'm just spewing into a microphone. So I'm not saying I am innocent. I'm not saying that I am morally unculpable. I don't know. And yeah, my conscience isn't great about it. My wife and I, we look at things and we see they're made in China. We either try to get something else or we just don't buy it. But sometimes there's no alternatives. So what do we do? I don't know. It's difficult. It is very hard. There is this idea that you shouldn't complain if you don't know the solution to what you're complaining about. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you know something wrong is going on, but you don't know how to fix it, well, it doesn't necessarily mean you should just be quiet. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say anything about it. You should maybe point it out. Be like, hey, there's a group of people being terribly tyrannized over there in China, whom we do business with. I don't know how we could really fix that, because I'm not a world leader. I'm not anybody who has any influence or sway. I don't know what I could do about it right here, right now, but I would just like to point it out. I am noticing it. I see it. I have heard about it. But, yeah, we absolutely can complain without having a response, without a solution. And now, my solution to this problem would just be stop doing trade until they fix their practices up a little bit, Like, stop rounding up Uyghur Muslims, and then, hey, we'll buy stuff from you. Wouldn't that be really awesome and easy to achieve? I don't know. It's just me. That's just me. I don't know. The least we can do is be a little uncomfortable about it and think about it and go, when we buy something from China. And that's not even to say the least about all of the other crap going on around the world. Even in our own backyards, there's stuff going on, like Peanut the squirrel that I brought up last 2 episodes ago. But obviously that is, while it is a complete and utter travesty that these 2 animals, Fred the raccoon and Peanut the squirrel, were ripped from their owner's arms and then euthanized. The fact that could happen in this country is just disgusting. But obviously that's on the lower side of the moral atrocities that are going on in this country. 2 things can be true at the same time. It does not compare at all to the genociding going on in China right now. But again, it's still something in our backyard that is clearly wrong and immoral, and we don't do anything about it. I don't want to say that. I don't want to re-talk about Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon. May they rest in peace. But people are actually raising money for, I guess they're doing some lawsuits and stuff, or some legal stuff. I don't know. Anyways, things are being done, but I'm not doing anything about it. Neither are you, most likely. I don't know. Are you? Good for you if you are. I digress. The least we can do for all of the terrible things that are going on in the world, the least we can do is think about it and then talk about it. And this is going back to where I started, which is I genuinely get kind of it's not fun when you try to the opportunity to bring up, like, let's say for some reason the opportunity to bring up Uyghur Muslims comes up in a conversation. Maybe you're talking about how you can't. Maybe you're talking about how you're annoyed that you can't find anything made in America, and you go, yeah, and China and gosh, what they got going on over there, and maybe there's a way for you to sneak it in, and then they kind of look at you and, oh yeah, well, I haven't heard much about that, And again, I'm not blaming these people. I'm not blaming anybody for not wanting to think about these things, and yet, yeah, actually, I am. I do blame people. I blame myself. I blame my wife. I blame my family. I blame everybody I blame all of us for not doing something about this, or anything for that matter that we know. By the way, again, there are for whatever reason nowadays, even though we have access to all of the information ever that you could ever want, for some reason, a lot of quote unquote what could be called atrocities, they're politicized. So there's sides of things. A good example is the Israel-Palestine thing. There's 2 different sides. There's like 8 different sides, but there's 2 main sides. Either the Palestinians want to kill the Israelis, so the Israelis have to defend themselves, or the Israelis are genociding the Palestinians, and so the Palestinians have just been defending themselves. I mean, that's a politicized atrocity. Something clearly is going on over there. There's some bad stuff, and yet for some reason we can't agree on what part of it is bad. So that's like a politicized atrocity, but I don't see how the Uyghur Muslims can be politicized. It's just going on. They're not Democrats. They're not Republicans, right? I don't know why the Democrats or Republicans would like the Chinese, so it seems like a pretty good thing we can all get behind, And yet, so that's why I'm using it as an example. So for that specific example, yeah, I blame all of us, and myself included, for not doing something about it, for not at least thinking about it and being willing to talk about it and being willing to call our government officials, talk to, hey, we need to do something here. This is a problem. Maybe we should stop buying things as little as, like, say, hey, just we don't need to even get our government involved. We're just going to stop buying Chinese products. Bring the money back either into America or at least within countries that go along with our moral guidelines, you know? This was Alexander Solzhenitsyn brought this up. I only read some of his book. I haven't read it all yet. The Gulag Archipelago, about the 1950s-ish Soviet Russia and the complete and utter chaotic government-ran murder that happened in that country. And he made an observation. He said, and I'm not gonna. This is not a direct quote. I'm getting the gist from it. But basically, he said each one of us are morally, each one of them, him and the rest of the Russian citizens, even the ones that were rounded up and sent to the Gulag, each one of them were guilty. Each one of them did their own part in letting that happen. There's a scene, not a scene, but he describes when people first started getting rounded up and sent to the Gulag. It'd be the middle of the night, and the door, you could hear your neighbor's door getting kicked down or getting knocked on. You could hear the troops and the trucks coming outside, and everybody just stayed in their house going, it's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. Their neighbor would do it. Sometimes even their own family members would get got, and they would just go, well, I'm innocent. They must be guilty. They must be guilty if they're being taken away like this. They must. It's as long as it's not me. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn made a point. He said, if on the first few nights of this happening, if people gave any sort of grief to the police, to the members of the government who were rounding people up, if they met them outside with whatever weapons they can muster, whether it be lead pipes or their own fists, if they gave any sort of resistance, it might have stopped it all. It might have stopped it all from happening, because the own police members, the human beings that were doing this, would have gone, well, I don't want to risk my life every night to tyrannize people. And yet, we know at least 20 million people were killed in Soviet Russia. We know that. The numbers are all over the place. We have no idea how really bad it got, but we know that happened. And it sucks. No one knows about it, though, because we don't talk about it, because it makes us feel uncomfortable, because similar things are going on right now, and we just want to look the other way and not have to think about it. I got to pay my bills. I got to, and I get it. I do it too. And I just think we owe it to, can you imagine being a Uyghur Muslim and then being told, all of a sudden some guy just comes up to you and you're like, by the way, the people in America, they know about you and they're not doing anything about it. And then most of them actually, to their credit, most of them don't know about what you're going through. But the ones who do, they're not doing anything about it. And they're just kind of going along. Anyways, have a nice day. Enjoy your prosecution. Enjoy your persecution. I mean, that would suck. That would really, not only is the worst thing happening to you, but also people who you think could do something about it aren't doing it. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, I would imagine. Not that I know for sure, but I could imagine that that's not exactly a great experience. So I just like to leave you with that. It really bothers me that we can't talk about these things and maybe have some kind of conversation about it that doesn't lead to just, oh, well, I just don't like thinking about these sort of things. There's nothing I can do about it. We can do our fair share. We can at least be uncomfortable. That's literally the least thing we can do. And with that, I'm going to stop rambling here. This is Rambling in a Closet. Thank you for listening. This is Kyle. I'll see you next time.